Reading with your kids.
Hey, come on in. So good to see you. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. As always, we are so very grateful that you're taking time out of your very, very busy day to join us. We have an exceptional show for you today, a very important show. Our guest is Christy Monson. She is the author of Love, Hugs, and Hope. And today we're talking about how we can talk to kids about tragedy and other really difficult subjects. Before Christy joins us, I want to take just a moment to talk to you a little bit about my nationally acclaimed school assembly program called We Choose Respect. We Choose Respect. For years, it has been inspiring kids to be kind, caring, and respectful. It's a really fun show that uses magic, storytelling, and illusion to inspire kids to work together to build safe, caring learning environments. Many schools use this program to kick off their bully-free campaign, their positive behavior initiatives. A lot of schools just use it to remind kids to always be respectful of each other. Now, I know you're not the person that's, you're most likely not the person that's making the decisions as to what kind of enrichment programs or assemblies that come into the school, but you do know the people who are in charge, the principal, the guidance counselor, the head of the PTA. You also know how very, very busy they are. So I'd really appreciate it, and they would appreciate it too, if you would take a moment to visit jedlie.com, Jedlie, jedlie.com. Take a minute to check out We Choose Respect. See what it's all about. And then if you think it's something that could benefit the kids at your kid's school, then share the information in the website with those people, the principal, the guidance counselor, the head of the PTA. They'd really appreciate it. They're really, really busy. And I'd appreciate it too, because when a parent brings my show to the attention of the folks at the school, they pay attention to it. So I'd really, really be grateful. Thanks very much. The name of the show again is We Choose Respect, and you can find out more about it at jedlie.com. Joining us on the line right now from Ogden in Utah, she is the author of a very important book because it addresses an issue that comes up in families, and it can be a very, very difficult issue. The name of the book is Love, Hugs, and Hope. Our guest today is Christy Monson. Christy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was saying that Love, Hugs, and Hope, it addresses issues that are really difficult for a lot of families to deal with. So why don't you tell us about the book and about those issues?
Okay, I wrote this book to help parents and children, help kids deal with tragedy that happens in their life. And the tragedy might be the death of a parent or a grandparent or the divorce that happens in lots of families nowadays, or even a goldfish. My son thought it was a tragedy when his goldfish was flushed down the garbage disposal. So you just never know what is going to affect kids. And this is a book to kind of help parents and children meet on common ground and be able to talk about the kids' feelings and what's happening with them.
Now, how do you use the book? Tell us a little bit about the book and the story, or is it one story, a series of stories?
No, it's just a book that really is for parents to read to children to help kids, give kids permission to be able to talk about their feelings and the things that are hurting them and the things that are hard for them. And then it gives kids ways that they can talk about their feelings and get through them. And then what we need to do after we talk about our feelings, how we rewrite it or walk beyond them.
Now, you are not just someone who read a couple of self-help books and decided to write a book. You have a background in counseling.
Yes, I'm a retired licensed marriage and family therapist. I had a large practice in Las Vegas, Nevada, for many years. And after I retired, decided I would become an author. And I have several self-help books in publication. And this is the one that I have for children.
Exciting. What was there a specific incident that inspired you to write Love, Hugs, and Hope, or was it just one of those things, one of the goals when you decided to become an author that I wanted to create this resource also for families?
Okay, the answer to that is yes to both of those things that you just said. I did want to write a resource that would be helpful for parents and children. And the incident that motivated it was the Sandy Hook incident. And I don't know if you remember several years ago when all those children were killed in the school. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote it at this time, and the author or the publisher was very interested in getting it right out. And it really has helped children throughout the world, not only with the Sandy Hook incident, but with all these other things like death and divorce and things that happen in families, to help kids be able to look at their feelings.
I remember Sandy Hook very, very well. I was performing at a Catholic school in Newtown, very, very close to Sandy Hook, a month before the tragedy happened. And I remember when I heard about the tragedy, it just shook me to my core. And I actually had called that school and said, look, if there's anything I can do, please let me know. And in their desperation, they just said, well, what can you do? And I said, I don't know, but if there's anything. And so, yeah, that was an incredible. And I know if I felt that way with that tiny connection to the town, and I know because I'd been back to that school and that community, it was an absolutely devastating incident and event.
Well, and things like that happen all over. Our kids, we've got some kids that live in Oregon, and there was a shooting at the Clackamas Town Center then just not maybe a year after or so, and that was just devastating. So it's really sad when these kind of things happen. Mm-hmm. But I think the book has a larger potential because it really can help parents or children when their tragedies happen in the child's life. I had a lady the other day that bought the book because her granddaughter is going through chemotherapy. She has got cancer, and so this is helpful for her and the parents and the child to be able to work through the scary things that are going to happen to that kid.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you're right, there are so many moments in life that are difficult, that don't make headlines and aren't covered on the news. As you were mentioning, divorce, illness, a friend moving away and moving to another school.
True, very true.
Yeah. What kind of reaction are you getting from folks who are reading the book?
The book has been extremely helpful for a lot of people. In fact, the publisher is just going to republish it. There are some books left on Amazon if readers are interested in them, but it will be republished in the fall of 2019. They're going to redo the artwork and do it again because it is completely sold out. So it really has been helpful for parents and children.
What do you think is the first step, other than just picking up your book and reading it? But if something tragic is happening with our kids, what's first step one for families?
The first step, I think, is to listen to your children, and that's the whole premise of the book. Is you got to listen to the kids. Some parents say, "Well, we're getting a divorce. How should I talk to my kids about it?" Well, the thing you should do is listen to your child and answer their questions and find out how they're hurting and find out what maybe funny ideas they have in their head that you can probably dissipate fairly easily. But you never know what a kid's thinking until you talk to them and really, really listen to find out. You shouldn't have a set script of what to do or how to do it, but you just love your kid and listen to them.
I think that what you just said is so very important, not only for dealing with tragedy, but just dealing with life, is that whole idea of listening to your kid, being truly present and being truly open and listening. We're so busy as parents, and there's so many things going on. And when our kids come home from school and there's something that happen in the school that they're either excited about or confused about or scared about or sad about. Whatever it is, it's really important for us to put down whatever it is we're doing and sit and hear and actually listen to what our children are saying.
And I love how you said that. I think that's absolutely perfect, because sometimes parents will have predisposed ideas of what they need to say or what they ought to say. And you really just have to listen and answer their questions, because half of it is just for the kid to know that there's somebody safe there that will listen and hear what's going on inside of them.
One of the things that I talk about a lot here in the show, and I absolutely talk about it with young parents. Now my kids are older, they're adults, and they're wonderful. But one of the things I stress to parents is the idea that they shouldn't be afraid to admit to their kids that they don't have the answers to some of these difficult questions. Is that something that you agree with? And if you do, why? Because I'm just going by experience.
Absolutely. I think it's important for us to be real. The kid needs to know that they've got questions sometimes, and we have questions sometimes too. We can't solve all the problems, just like you said about the Sandy Hook incident. We feel helpless, just like the kids feel helpless. And so it's really good to be able to say that to kids. And then I think it's good to say, well, what do you think we should do? And then that way you can open up a discussion so the child can give their input and you can give theirs, and you guys can come up with a solution together.
I love this. Christy and I were talking beforehand about, before the interview started, about my wife sending me to Las Vegas to study magic. And one of the things, I got into magic kind of through a back door, and really went a long time with knowing how to do a few things, but not knowing why it was working. And attending those classes was part of the fun, was not only learning new things, but understanding why what I was already doing worked. And one of the things that I've talked about a lot is that giving our kids choices or allowing our kids to make suggestions, and that's really empowering for them. Can you kind of explain to us how that is and how important that is and how we can best do that?
I love what you've just said. It's such a wonderful segue into something that I believe in so strongly. I have a book out also about family councils. It's called Family Talk. And I feel one of the most important things that we can do is counsel with our children. Because if you want to teach your kid a good skill, you want to teach them to be able to problem solve. That's the most important thing that you can do. And so as you guys bat ideas around, brainstorm things together and decide how you want to solve a problem, the kid is learning to be empowered. He's learning not to be a victim of the world. He's learning that he has choices and that there are solutions to problems in the world.
And that really is empowering for kids, because it's I remember nights with my son when he would come home and he would be frustrated and scared, and just sitting down and making two lists of what are the options and what are the potential results of if you do this option, what can happen? If you don't do that option, what can happen? And just kind of making that list so he could sit down and compare it. And I think sometimes just sitting down and helping them breathe and take to slow down enough to talk about those things and talk about those options is so helpful for kids.
I think it's wonderful. And then I think there needs to be some follow through after you do that counseling together to say, okay, which option are you going to choose? And then help the child organize himself so that he can follow through with those options. I've just finished a podcast on the stress that comes for people as they begin to set New Year's resolutions and don't follow through with them. And so we need those solution focused skills are important all the way through our life, and they are empowering. So you're absolutely right.
Now, here's a question. I hope I can ask it the right way. We're giving our kids options, and one of the things I say to parents is, if you ask your child's opinion, what do you think about, and they give you an answer, you have to accept it. You can't tell the kid that their opinion is wrong. They might get 2 + 2 equals whatever wrong, but just sharing their opinion about something. What if you sit down and you say to your kid, okay, what do you think? What do you think is the best option? And they come up with an option that you think, it's probably not the best option, but the option isn't running into the middle of a busy highway, so you don't think it's going to work, but it's not dangerous for the kid. Do you let the kid, you empower the kid by making that option and being there if it doesn't follow through, or what would be the best option for parents in that case?
You already gave the answer to this one in something you said just a few minutes ago. As the child gives their answer, you say, okay, let's see, what do you think will happen if you make that choice? Mm-hmm. And then you give and then you say what you think is going to happen. And you know what? Sometimes it's really okay to let the kid take that option and try it, because we learn from our failures. In my family counsel's book, sometimes the kids will come up with kind of off-the-wall solutions, and it takes them 2 or 3 times before they figure out what's really going to work. Mm-hmm. And there's some funny stories in there that I've had from my counseling experience where, anyway, I won't go into the details of them, but the kids really need to make the choices, and then they'll learn from their failures, and that's really as good as having a success.
That is true. Our kids do learn from their failures. I guess one of the most important things that they need to learn is that you survive when you fail, but also that they have people who love them that are going to be there to help them pick up the pieces and try again.
Yep, that's absolutely true. I want to go back and say one thing, though, that you said. When you ask a child, how are we going to solve this problem, or what are we going to do? 99.9% of the time they're going to look at you and say, I don't know. And they will. You just try that. So then you say to them, well, what about this choice? Or what about this choice? Or what about this choice? And then you start the brainstorming process. So you really do have some input most of the time with things like that. Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the most, death and moving away and divorce, but besides those monumental events, what do you think is the most challenging thing facing kids today?
Well, I think there could be a myriad of answers to that. Children's literature has got a new movement that is saying that we need to meet the needs of all children. And so there's a lot of books about special needs, about Asperger's and depression and those kinds of things. And so there's a lot of literature out there now about special needs and how kids can find themselves. They want to find themselves in a page of a book. So I think it's important that all issues be addressed. And so for some kid that has got cerebral palsy and is able to function and be mainstreamed, then he's going to have a whole set of different questions than somebody that suffers from depression or somebody that suffers from anxiety. And so we are really focusing on the needs of children more now than we have in the past. And so I think that I have to say the answer to that question is really varied. It depends on the child, because we all have our idiosyncrasies and we all have to learn to function within the parameters of what kind of a person we are and how we live. I've got a granddaughter that's got some anxiety, and so she really has to work to be able to work through that anxiety and get to the point where she can go to school every day and do the things she needs to do.
I guess one of the biggest challenges that we all face is just kind of getting to know ourselves and accepting who we are and understanding who we are and what we need.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the other books that you have written that will help families?
Well, the Family Talk book, like I mentioned, and that's also on Amazon. I have a book called Becoming Free. And that's the first book that I wrote after I retired. I had so many success stories with my counseling that I wanted to write a book kind of in a tribute to the people that I worked with. And so there are many stories of my clients. Of course, the names and circumstances have all been changed so that they're not recognizable.
Sure.
But the end of that book is an armchair therapy book that talks about all of the techniques that I found were very successful in my practice. And so I recommend that book also because it's like having your own therapist at home, and you can just read this section or that section and work on things that you need to work on as you need to work on. I have a book called Finding Peace in Times of Tragedy that's for adults that will be out April 1st of 2019. And I am very excited about that because it addresses all of the issues that come when we are exposed to tragedies like we are. And you said so perfectly about Sandy Hook. We all respond to things that are on the news that happened, even if we weren't involved. It's a tragedy for all of us. And so we all have our own idiosyncrasies that we need to work through. And in that book, I have got a lady that survived 9/11. She got out of the second tower when the first tower was hit. And I have the story of a mother whose son was shot up in Afghanistan. And I've got a young man whose father committed suicide and his brother died in a house fire, a lot of death in that family. And then I've got a lady that was raped. I've got a lot of stories about people in there that will be extremely helpful for those. And so that'll be out in 2019. They asked me also to write a book about internet etiquette and sexting and all those things that happen to kids, so that it's a book to kind of help kids and parents navigate the social media that is so changing these days. Mm-hmm. Because you really don't want to put a kid out in the middle of the road to get hit by a car, but we have to be careful not to put them in the middle of the internet highway so that they're beaten up by things that can happen on the internet. So those are some of the books that I've got coming out.
Yeah, that is, I think parents have blinders on. I know some teachers do. One of the things that I do and occasionally in my live educational magic shows is I'll just say to a group of third graders, how many of you have a cell phone? And almost every hand goes up. And how many of you are on Instagram or Facebook? And 60 or 70% of the hands go up. And the teachers are shocked. And, and when I would perform at a high school, I often ask, what's the most pressing issue that you're trying to deal with? And they'll say, can you please, talk to the kids about sexting and stop sending nude pictures to each other. And I don't think parents have any idea just how serious this is.
I think that's absolutely true. And kids are not, and see, if you're talking to third graders, those kids shouldn't even have internet accounts until they're 12. You have to be 12 before you have those. And so I have addressed the sexting incidents, and I've addressed netiquette. There's a lot of ways that we need to be kind to each other on the internet. And so I've addressed all those issues. And adults can abuse kids by getting involved with them on the internet. It's just really scary what can happen out there. So it's something that we need really to bring to public awareness.
Absolutely. Well, we need to make our public aware of where they can connect with you online and learn about all the great books, which are really wonderful resources that you have. So tell us about your website.
My website is www.christymonson.com, and all my books are on Amazon, and even the new books you can pre-order, the Finding Peace in Times of Tragedy. So they're all on Amazon, and you can find those. And do have them in Barnes and Nobles, and I'm on Goodreads and Twitter. And so if you go to my website, you can connect to all my social media.
Well, this is wonderful. I've had a wonderful time. I've learned so much speaking to you today, and I think our audience has too. The name of the book is Love, Hugs, and Hope. It's from our friends over at Familius. Be sure to check it out, and also make sure you check out ChristyMonson.com. Our guest today has been Christy Monson. Christy, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it, Did. Thank you, thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Sarah O'Leary. Sarah O'Leary is coming to us to talk about her wonderful picture book, Owls Are Good at Keeping Secrets. You know, we're really happy that owls are good at keeping secrets, but we don't want you to keep the Reading with Your Kids podcast a secret. Please continue to let your family and friends and colleagues know about the show. So many great ways to do that. You can share our posts on Facebook and retweet us and talk about us on Instagram and connect with us and like our page, Reading with Your Kids, on Facebook. You can also please subscribe to us, even if you just go every day out of habit and click the latest podcast through Facebook or iTunes or LinkedIn or Twitter. If you subscribe on one or more platforms to the show, that helps other people know about the podcast and helps inspire them to do more reading with their kids and helps make the world a better place. And you can subscribe to us so many different places on our website, of course, readingwithyourkids.com, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Podcast Addict, iHeartRadio, radio.com. You can subscribe to us on Himalaya, the largest podcasting platform in all of Asia. So many if you can find podcasts, you can find us on Stitcher Radio. I'm telling you, we're all over the place, and we're really grateful, and we're happy that you are with us. Please make sure to join us for the next episode of the show with Sarah O'Leary, and please join me in thanking Christy Monson for being here today. And of course, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by always taking time to read with your kids. I'll be looking for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.